Hi, I'm Tammy McCutchen, and welcome to another edition of Tammy Talks, where I try to make the complexity of federal and state wage and hour laws simple in under 10 minutes. In the world of wage and hour, a lot can happen in a month. You might have caught my one-hour webinar in February about developments at DOL in 2021 and some predictions for 2022. If not, you can watch that at ComplianceHR.com. But new developments keep coming along, and so today I want to provide you with some updates on independent contracting and overtime. Let's start with overtime. As I covered in the webinar, the DOL plans to propose changes to the overtime exemption regulations later this spring. The primary goal is to increase the minimum salary level required to be exempt from the FLSA overtime requirements. Remember, all employees paid by the hour or paid a salary below the minimum level must also be paid overtime when they work more than 40 hours in a week. The salary level was last increased in 2020 to $35,568 annualized. That was after a 2016 attempt to raise the level to over $47,000. That was killed by a Texas court. Yes, it does seem a bit too soon for another increase, but I have no doubt that it's coming. The question is, how high? Increasing the 2020 level just for inflation would get us to over $42,000. Increasing the invalidated 2016 level for inflation would get us to almost $57,000. But it could actually be much higher, $70,000 or even $80,000. I'm not making this up. Last December, 106 unions and employee advocate groups signed a letter asking Secretary Walsh to increase the minimum salary to over $73,000 for 2021, right? Last year, and to over $82,000 by 2026, while also tightening what they call the toothless duties test. The update? DOL is meeting with unions, advocates, and industry groups now and into April. So we could see a proposed rule soon after that. Next, some shocking developments on independent contracting. Do you remember the independent contractor regulations that came out in the final weeks of the Trump administration? Those regulations officially adopted the economic reality test. That is, a worker is an employee if she is economically dependent on the employer, looking at the degree of control and a worker's opportunity for profit and loss as the core factors for determining employee versus independent contractor status. We all thought those regulations were dead, right? Just weeks after President Biden was inaugurated, the DOL first delayed the effective date of the Trump regulations and last May rescinded them altogether. But not so fast, because the independent contractor regulations are alive again. Yes, folks, a Texas court has done it again, ruling this month that the delay and rescission of the Trump regulations was invalid. In addition to some procedural issues, the court found that the Biden administration was arbitrary and capricious when it failed to consider alternatives to total rescission of the Trump rules. As a result, the court held, the Trump rules became effective in March 2021 and remain in effect today. So where does that leave us? What is next for independent contracting? I think it's likely that the DOL will appeal this decision to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. But I also think it likely that the Fifth Circuit will affirm, as that court has 11 judges appointed by Republicans versus only 5 judges appointed by Democrats. And 6 of the 11 Republicans were appointed by President Trump. Of course, if DOL loses again, it could try for a win at the 6-3 Supreme Court. The DOL can probably get where it wants to go more quickly and with less legal uncertainty by just starting over with a completely new regulation. All it needs to do is consider alternatives to the Trump rule, as suggested by the Texas court. They could, for example, modify the Trump rule so that none of the 5 factors are core factors given greater weight, or adopt a 6-factor test, as some courts have done, ranking or rephrasing those factors, or adopt the 7 factors in DOL fact sheet number 13, which was used before the Trump rules. Now, I know you're looking for the bottom line. What am I supposed to do as an employer with independent contractors? Here's my advice. Until the appeals are over or we have a new regulation, you should argue that the Trump rules apply when defending a DOL investigation or in private litigation. But if you're setting policy or trying to decide whether to classify a worker as an independent contractor, I would follow Fact Sheet 13. If you're a subscriber to ComplianceHR, you are already doing this when using the Navigator IC app to determine worker status. Before I sign off, let me put up on the screen where you can find the Trump regulations, Fact Sheet 13, and one other important source, Administrator's Interpretation 2015-1. That was withdrawn by the Trump administration, but it was written in the Obama administration by David Weil. That's it for today. Thank you for watching Tammy Talks. Please follow me on social media, and you can find my 1-hour recorded webinars on independent contracting, overtime, and other wage and hour topics at ComplianceHR.com. I'm Tammy McCutchen, signing off from beautiful Eastern Tennessee.